The champion grabbed the microphone, pointed straight at the quiet man holding his little girl's hand, and shouted for the whole town to hear. You, yeah, you the janitor. You flinch when a door slams. Bet you've never thrown a punch in your life. The crowd laughed. Nathan Brooks just smiled, tightened his grip on Emma's small fingers, and walked away without a word. Everyone thought he was a coward. But 3 of those laughing men would soon learn the truth. The calm father in the work shirt had once commanded one of the deadliest SEAL teams in American history. Before we begin, drop the name of your town in the comments so I can see how far this story travels tonight, and if you believe real strength stays quiet, subscribe and stay with me all the way to the end. Nathan Brooks woke at 4:47 in this morning, the same as he had for 22 years, 3 minutes before the alarm would have gone off if he'd bothered to set one. He lay still in the dark for a moment, listening. Not to anything in particular, just listening the way a man listens when the habit of listening once kept him alive. The furnace ticking, the wind pressing against the east window. Down the hall, the soft, even breathing of a 9-year-old girl who slept the way only children who feel safe can sleep. That sound, Emma's breathing, was the only reason he got out of bed most mornings. He swung his feet to the cold floor, sat there, and rubbed his face with both hands. Okay, he said quietly to no one. Okay. Grief has a schedule, and Nathan's arrived every morning right about now in the gap between waking and standing. Sarah had been gone 2 years. 2 years, 1 month, and 11 days. He didn't count on purpose. The number just lived in him the way shrapnel lives in a man long after the wound closes. Hein made the coffee. He packed the lunch turkey on wheat apple slices, the fruit snacks Emma pretended she was too old for, and ate anyway. He laid out her clothes on the couch because she couldn't decide anything before 7 a.m., and it saved them both the argument. Then he woke her up the way he did every day. Morning sunshine. Emma groaned and pulled the blanket over her head. It's still nighttime. It's not still nighttime. It's dark. It's Colorado in the fall. It's always dark. Come on. She peeked one eye out. Can we have pancakes? It's Tuesday. So pancakes are a weekend thing. You know this. We've discussed it. There's a whole treaty. Emma sat up, a disaster, and gave him the look, the one that was so much like her mother's. It sometimes made his chest hurt. You just don't want to make pancakes. That is also true, Nathan admitted, and she laughed, and the day started the way good days start, which is to say, small. He drove her to school in the old blue truck with the heater that took 10 minutes to remember its job. Emma talked the whole way. She always did. About a girl named Priya who had a bird. About whether her teacher, Mr. Coleman, was secretly a robot. About the community sports festival happening that Saturday down at the fairgrounds where there'd be a bounce house and cotton candy and apparently a real famous fighter guy. A what? Nathan said. A fighter. Priya's brother says he's undefeated. He has a dojo now. He's like super famous. Super famous, huh? His name's Tyler Grant. He's on the internet. He does the thing. Emma made 2 fists and jabbed the air, nearly hitting the windshield. The punching. The punching, Nathan repeated. Can we go, please? Priya's going. There's cotton candy. Nathan pulled up to the drop-off line. Kids poured out of cars in a river of backpacks. We'll see, he said, which they both knew meant yes. Emma unbuckled, then paused with her hand on the door. She did this sometimes, got very serious for a second the way kids do when a thought is bigger than they are. Dad. Yeah, sweetheart. You'd never let anything happen to me. Right. He looked at her. Something in him went still and quiet, and absolutely certain, the way it used to go still on a rooftop, half a world away, with his heart rate at 52. Nothing, he said. Ever. That's my only job. She smiled, satisfied, and bolted for the doors. Nathan sat in the idling truck a moment longer than he needed to, watching until she was inside. Then he drove to work. Lincoln High School was 30 years old and falling apart in the specific expensive way that old public buildings fall apart. Nathan knew every inch of it, every leaking pipe, every dead radiator, every door that stuck when it rained. As the maintenance supervisor, he'd made it his business to know. It was the one thing he could still do well, keep a large, complicated thing from breaking. Brooks. Denny, the vice principal, waved him down in the hallway before he'd even clocked in. The heat's out in the West Wing again. Whole science department's wearing coats. It's the coupling, Nathan said. I ordered the part. Comes Thursday. Thursday? They're freezing today. I'll rig it warm for now. It won't be pretty. You're a lifesaver. Nathan just nodded and headed for the boiler room. He wasn't a lifesaver. He'd been a lifesaver once, in the literal blood and fire sense of the word, and he'd learned that the ones you couldn't save stayed with you far longer than the ones you could. Now he fixed heating couplings. It was better. Nobody died if he got it wrong. He worked most of the morning on his back under a groaning boiler, and it was good work, honest work, the kind that quieted his mind. Two of the younger custodians, Marcus and a kid named Rory, came down around 11 to eat their lunch on the crates by the door. You going Saturday, Nathan? Marcus asked around a mouthful of sandwich. To what? The festival, man. Tyler Grant's doing a demo. My cousin trains at his place. Says the guy's never lost. Like never. So my daughter tells me. Rory laughed. You should see this dude's videos. He calls out people, just like regular guys, humiliates them. It's kind of messed up, but you can't stop watching. Nathan slid out from under the boiler, wiped his hands. Why would a grown man want to humiliate regular guys? Rory shrugged. Views, money. I don't know. People love it. People love a lot of things that aren't good for them, Nathan said, and went back under the boiler. He didn't think about Tyler Grant again for 4 days. Saturday came bright and cold, the sky that hard Colorado blue that makes the mountains look close enough to touch. The fairgrounds smelled like fry oil and hay. Emma held Nathan's hand and pulled him from booth to booth, cotton candy, already staining her mouth blue. There, she said. The bounce house. Can I? Shoes off. Stay where I can see you. You always say that. And you always keep your shoes on, so. He crouched to help her with the laces. 20 minutes, then we get lunch. He watched her disappear into the churning mass of kids, and for a little while, he just stood in the sun. One of 100 parents on the trampled grass, arms folded, unremarkable. That was the goal. To be unremarkable. To be one more tired dad watching one more kid bounce. He almost made it. There was a stage set up near the center of the fairgrounds, and a crowd had gathered, a big one, 300-400 people. A voice came booming through cheap speakers, too loud, sounded flat with confidence. Because let me tell you something, folks. Everybody thinks they're tough. Everybody. Guy cuts you off in traffic, you honk your horn, you feel like a big man. But when it counts, when it's real. A pause engineered for effect. Most of you would fold like a lawn chair. Laughter. Uneasy laughter, the kind a crowd makes when it isn't sure if it's the joke. Nathan glanced toward the stage. A man stood at the center of it, mid-30s, built like a weapon, and dressed to be seen, tight black shirt, with his own name across the chest. A camera crew of 2, circling him, a banner behind reading Grant Combat Academy, where winners are made. Tyler Grant. Had to be. How was good-looking in the way of men who have never once questioned it. He moved with the loose, coiled ease of a real athlete, and Nathan gave him that the man could clearly fight. But there was something under the swagger. Something Nathan had seen in men before, in green lieutenants, and in enemies both. A hunger that wasn't about winning. It was about being seen winning. 2 very different appetites. Nathan looked back toward the bounce house. Emma's blue jacket bouncing. Good. You, sir? Tyler's voice cracked across the crowd. Yeah, you in the flannel. Come on up here. Nathan didn't look. It wasn't him. Flannel described half the men present. But the crowd was turning, and a heavy-set man in a red flannel shirt near the front raised his hands, laughing nervously. Nah, man, I'm good. Come on, free lesson, don't be shy. The man went up red-faced and grinning, wanting to be a good sport. Nathan watched Tyler put an arm around him, mug for the camera, then smoothly, casually, cruelly sweep the man's legs and drop him flat on his back on the mat. The crowd gasped, then laughed. The man got up slower than he went down, still grinning, but grinning wrong, now embarrassment sitting behind his eyes. See that? Tyler crowed. 300 pounds down in half a second. Because it's not about size, it's about who's willing. He pointed at the man's chest as he limped off. You weren't willing. That's okay. Most people aren't. Nathan's jaw tightened. Something old moved in him low and slow, and he made himself let it go. Not my business. Not my fight. He had exactly one fight, and she was in a bounce house with blue cotton candy on her face. He turned to go find her. That's when Emma ran up, breathless, cheeks pink. Dad, come watch the fighter guys doing tricks. We were gonna get lunch. Just for a minute, Priya says he broke a board with his head. That's not something to aspire to, sweetheart. But she had his hand, and she was pulling, and it was easier to drift toward the edge of the crowd than to argue, so he let her lead him there, meaning to give it 2 minutes and leave. 2 minutes. That was the plan. Up close. Tyler Grant was even louder. He was working the crowd now, walking the front row, the camera trailing him. I'll tell you what nobody wants to hear, he said. The world is soft. Kids these days, no offense to the little ones here. He winked at a cluster of children, and it made Nathan's skin crawl. They're raised soft. Their dads are soft. You want your kid to respect you? You gotta be somebody worth respecting. He stopped more or less in front of Nathan. Not on purpose, just the way the walk went. His eyes landed on Emma, on the cotton candy, on the small, delighted face looking up at him. Hey, sweetheart, Tyler said, dropping into a crouch, all charm now for the camera. You like fighting? Emma nodded shyly. Yeah, your dad ever teach you how to throw a punch? Emma shook her head. No. Tyler looked up, found Nathan standing behind her, took him in the work-worn jacket, the tired eyes, the still unremarkable posture, and something flickered across his face. Contempt, quick and casual. Course not. Let me guess. He stood addressing the crowd now warming up. Desk job, something with spreadsheets. Maintenance, Nathan said evenly. I fix boilers. The crowd tittered. Tyler's grin widened. He'd found his mark. Maintenance. He said it like a punchline. See this? This is exactly what I'm talking about, folks. Nothing wrong with honest work, don't get me wrong. But this little girl... He gestured at Emma, and Nathan felt every muscle in his body go quiet and ready. She's looking at Daddy right now, thinking Daddy's gonna keep her safe. And Daddy... Tyler looked Nathan up and down, slow for the camera. Daddy flinches when a door slams. Am I right? Bet you've never thrown a punch in your life. The crowd laughed. Nathan looked at Tyler for a long moment. Here is what almost nobody in that crowd could have understood. In that single moment, Nathan Brooks ran the whole thing out to the end. He saw it all the way he could take the man's wrist and put him face down in the dirt before the camera even swung around the 3 pressure points that would end it in under a second. The exact amount of force that would hurt without harming, and the exact amount that would harm. He'd done it to men far more dangerous than Tyler Grant, men with rifles and worse. It would be easy. It would be so easy it was almost funny. And it would be on the internet by nightfall. And Emma would see her father as a man who hurt people. And the phone would ring, and there'd be questions, and the careful, quiet life he'd built brick by brick to give his daughter something soft to grow up inside, all of it would crack. So Nathan did the hardest thing he'd ever done in a life full of hard things. He smiled. You're probably right, he said gently. Tyler blinked. That wasn't the reaction the show called for. Then Tyler, showing off now, stepped forward and put his open hand on Nathan's chest and shoved, not hard enough to be an attack, just hard enough to be an insult, a little push to move the peasant out of the frame. Nathan let himself take a half step back, absorbing it, giving the man exactly the picture he wanted. Sorry, buddy, Tyler said, not sorry at all, playing to the laughter. Wide load coming through. Nathan reached down and took Emma's hand. Come on, sweetheart, he said quietly. Let's get that lunch. And he turned and walked away. Behind him, Tyler called out, milking it. That's right, go on. Give the little girl a wave, folks. There goes a real tough guy. And the crowd laughed, and the camera caught Nathan Brooks walking off with his head down and his daughter's hand in his, looking for all the world like the softest man at the fair. Emma was quiet until they reached the food trucks. Then, in a small voice, she said, Dad, was that man being mean to you? Nathan crouched down to her level, took a napkin, wiped a smear of blue sugar from the corner of her mouth. A little bit, yeah. Why didn't you say anything? I thought about how to answer that. He'd thought about it 1,000 times in 1,000 versions over the years. How do you explain restraint to a child? How do you explain that? The whole point of having power is choosing not to use it. You want to know a secret, he said. Emma nodded. Anybody can win a fight if all they care about is winning. That's easy. You just have to be willing to hurt somebody more than they're willing to hurt you. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. But that man back there, he needs everybody to watch him. He needs everybody to think he's strong. You know what that means? Emma shook her head. It means he doesn't believe it himself. Not really. A man who's actually strong doesn't have to prove it. He just is it. Quiet. Nathan tapped her lightly on the nose. You understand? Kind of, Emma said, which was honest. You will, he said. Now, corn dog or grilled cheese? Both. You're an animal. Fine. Both. She laughed, and just like that, the man on the stage was gone from her world, the way things pass out of a child's world, so mercifully fast. But not from Nathan's. Not entirely. Because as he stood in line for the corn dog, a corner of his mind, the trained patient, watchful corner that had never fully gone to sleep and never would noted something small. Tyler Grant up on that stage was watching him leave. Not laughing anymore. Just watching with his head cocked slightly, a strange expression on his face. He was watching the way a man watches something that doesn't add up. The video went online that night. Nathan didn't see it. He didn't own the kind of phone that showed him such things, and he wouldn't have looked if he did. But the town saw it. By Monday it had a title, Tough Guy Dad Gets Humbled, and it had 200,000 views, and it had done exactly what Tyler wanted it to do, which was make people talk about Tyler. Nathan found out because of the way Marcus wouldn't meet his eyes in the boiler room. You saw it, Nathan said. Marcus winced. Man, I'm sorry. My cousin sent it around. Everybody's seen it. It's kind of a thing now. It's fine. It's not, though. The way he talked to you and your little girl right there? That ain't right, Nathan. Bunch of us think it ain't right. Marcus shook his head. But you, man, you didn't even flinch. Most guys would have swung on him. Most guys would have lost, Nathan said mildly, and it was the truest and most misleading thing he'd said all day. Right, he's undefeated, dude. Said Nathan, and picked up his wrench. He thought that would be the end of it. A viral video, a few weeks of chuckling, and then the internet would move on to the next thing, the way it always did. He'd be forgotten. Forgotten was good. Forgotten was the whole plan. But Tyler Grant did not forget. Because here is the thing that gnawed at Tyler. The thing he couldn't put into words but couldn't put down either. Every man Tyler had ever humiliated had reacted. They'd gotten angry or scared, or they'd puffed up and pretended not to care. And Tyler could read all of those, could feel the fear underneath, could taste it. That was the whole game. He found men's fear, and he pulled it out into the light, and the crowd loved him for it. But the maintenance guy hadn't been afraid. Tyler had shoved him, and there'd been no flinch. Not the frozen non-flinch of a coward either. Something else. Something Tyler had felt in his own hand when he'd made contact. The man's chest hadn't given the way a soft man's chest gives. It had been like pushing a wall that politely decided to move. And the eyes. When Tyler had made his little speech about Daddy flinching, the man had looked at him, and for just a second, half a second less, there'd been something in those eyes that Tyler had never once seen from a mark, and it had crawled up his spine and lodged there, and would not leave. The man had looked at him the way you look at something you already know you can beat. Tyler told himself he was imagining it. He watched the video back 40 times, freezing it on Nathan's face, and told himself he saw fear. There saw a beaten-down nobody. But some animal part of him, the part that had kept him undefeated through 100 and change fights, knew better. And it itched. So on Wednesday, Tyler posted again. Nathan learned about the second video from Denny, the vice principal, who came to find him during lunch, looking deeply uncomfortable. Nathan, hey, you got a sec? For you, Denny always. This is gonna be weird. That guy, the fighter guy from the festival. He put up another video, and it's about you specifically. Nathan set down his sandwich. Specifically. He named the school. He said, hang on, let me... Denny pulled out his phone, grimacing. He says he wants a rematch. He's calling you out. Says he'll donate 10 grand to the school's athletic program if you have the guts to spar him one round. He's making it a whole thing. He's tagging the district. Nathan was quiet. I already talked to the superintendent. Denny went on quickly. Nobody expects you to do anything. This is that guy being a lunatic, that's all. But it's Nathan, it's blowing up. People are commenting. Some of them are on your side saying leave the guy alone, but a lot of them are, you know. Denny shrugged helplessly. You know how people are. Chicken. They're calling me chicken. Some of them, yeah. Nathan almost laughed. 22 years he'd served. He'd been shot twice. He'd carried a wounded man 3 miles across open country with a bullet in his own leg. He'd made decisions in the dark that no man should have to make and lived with all of them. And now, a town of strangers was calling him a coward because a YouTuber shoved him at a fair. There was a purity to the absurdity of it that he almost admired. What do you want me to do about it, Denny? Nothing, God, no. Nothing. I just didn't want you blindsided. If parents ask, or if just so you're not caught off guard. Denny hesitated. For what it's worth, my money'd be on you. I don't know why. I've just got a feeling about you, Brooks. Always have. You've got that thing. What thing? I don't know. The still thing. My granddad had it. He was at Normandy. Never talked about it, but he had that stillness. Like nothing could touch him because the worst already had. Denny shrugged, embarrassed by his own sincerity. Anyway, sorry to bug you at lunch. Nathan watched him go and thought about a lot of things and finished his sandwich and said nothing. That night, he made pancakes, even though it was a Wednesday. Emma looked at the plate, then at him, deeply suspicious. It's Wednesday. I'm aware. The treaties can be amended, Nathan said, under special circumstances. What's the special circumstance? He looked at his daughter, 9 years old. Syrup already on her chin. The whole entire reason. His heart still beat, and he felt the day's absurd anger dissolve into something clean and simple. I just love you a lot, he said. That's the circumstance. Emma rolled her eyes, but she was smiling, and she ate 4 pancakes, and it was the best Wednesday Nathan had had in a while. The trouble was, Tyler Grant had made a public promise, and public promises are prisons for men who live for the crowd. He'd said, rematch, and now the crowd wanted the rematch, and when Nathan didn't respond, didn't post, didn't comment, didn't so much as acknowledge that Tyler Grant existed, the silence made Tyler crazy. Any response Tyler could have used. Anger fed him. Fear fed him. But silence. Silence was the one thing Tyler Grant had never been able to stand all the way back to a childhood. He never talked about a father who'd looked right through him. Silence said, you don't matter. And Tyler Grant would rather be hated than not matter. So he did the thing that men like Tyler always do when the crowd is watching and the target won't play along. He went to find Nathan in person. He showed up at Lincoln High on a Thursday afternoon, camera crew in tow, right as school let out and the parking lot filled with buses and teenagers and parents. He filmed himself walking up to the front office, playing it up for the phone. So we're here at the school where our tough guy works, he narrated low and conspiratorial, grinning. Since he won't answer my calls, figured I'd come say hi. Real friendly, just 2 guys talking. There is nothing friendly about a man who brings a camera to your workplace. Nathan was in the gym up on a ladder, replacing a burned-out light in the scoreboard, when a freshman named Toby ran in wide-eyed. Mr. Brooks, that fighter guy's here. The one from the videos. He's in the front office asking for you. Nathan came down the ladder slowly. He set the light bulb on the bleachers. He wiped his hands on a rag. Where's Emma? He said. Not what does he want? Not why is he here? The first thought, the only first thought, the way it had been for 2 years. Who? My daughter. Little girl, blue jacket. She waits for me in the library on Thursdays. I don't know. Then find out. Nathan said, and something in his voice made the boy run. He didn't hurry to the front office. He walked. He used the walk the way he'd been trained to use every second before contact to breathe, to slow his heart to become empty and ready. By the time he pushed through the doors into the front hall, his pulse was down under 60, and his mind was as clear and cold as mountain water. Tyler was there holding court in the lobby, his cameraman filming a knot of starstruck teenagers gathering. He'd been signing autographs. He looked up when the doors opened, and his whole face lit with theatrical delight. "There he is," Tyler crowed. "The man himself, ladies and gentlemen, the toughest janitor in Colorado." Nathan stopped 10 feet away. He didn't say anything. "Oh, don't be shy," Tyler said, ambling closer, camera following. "I came all this way. Least you could do is say hi." He turned to the kids. "You guys know him. This is a local celebrity. This man got so scared at the fair last week he ran off holding his little girl's hand." "You need to leave," Nathan said, quietly. Not a threat, a fact stated. Tyler grinned wider. "Ooh, he speaks. What's that? Say it louder for the camera." "There are children here. You need to leave. Now." "Or what?" Tyler stepped in close. Too close, the way he did, the way that always got a reaction, chest almost to chest. Looking down at Nathan, with the cheerful cruelty of a man who has never once been made to pay for anything. "Come on. Or what, tough guy, do something. Everybody's watching. Show your daughter what daddy's made of." And here it was again. The whole thing laid out in front of Nathan like a chessboard, where he already knew every move to checkmate. He could feel the specific weight of the man leaning into his space, could read the sloppy overconfidence in his stance, could see the 3 or 4 ways this ended with Tyler Grant on the linoleum and everyone gasping. His body wanted it. 22 years of training wanted it, sang for it, the way a drawn bow wants to loose. Instead, Nathan looked past Tyler at the kids, at their phones already up and filming, at the front office ladies frozen behind the glass. And he did the math. He always did the only math that mattered. If I move, they see a violent man. They see a maintenance worker who assaulted a guest. And somewhere in this building, a 9-year-old girl finds out her father put a man on the floor. He would not give that to Emma. He would not give it to the crowd. He would not give it to Tyler. "I'm not going to fight you," Nathan said, steady, almost kind. "Not today, not ever. You can film whatever you want. You can call me whatever you want. I'm going to go pick up my daughter now." Something crossed Tyler's face, then genuine confusion. The mask slipping for just a moment. He'd come here to provoke a reaction, and he'd gotten the one reaction he had absolutely no idea what to do with. "You're really not going to do anything," Tyler said, and it wasn't a taunt now. It was almost a question. Almost bewildered. "No," said Nathan. "Why not?" And there was something naked in it, something that surprised even Tyler, some old wound speaking before he could stop it. "Everybody does something. Everybody. Why won't you?" Nathan looked at him for a long moment. And for the first time he saw it clearly. Not just an arrogant man, but a hungry one. A man starving for something a fight could never feed. It was almost enough to make him feel sorry for him. "Because I've got nothing to prove to you," Nathan said. "And you've got everything to prove to yourself. That's the whole difference between us. It always was." Then he stepped around Tyler Grant, not touching him, and walked down the hall toward the library where his daughter was waiting. Behind him, for once, the crowd was silent. And Tyler Grant stood in the middle of that silence, camera still rolling, with the strangest feeling he'd had in years. The feeling that he had just walked up to something he didn't understand and jabbed it with a stick. Emma was reading in the corner of the library, feet swinging off the chair, and she looked up when Nathan came in, and her whole face opened into a smile. "Dad, you're late. I read 3 chapters. 3 whole chapters. You genius." There was yelling in the hallway. Was there? Nathan crouched to gather her backpack. Probably a fire drill. It didn't sound like a fire drill. You'd be surprised what fire drills sound like. He held out his hand. "Come on, kiddo. Let's go home. I'm thinking spaghetti." She took his hand and hopped down and chattered about her book all the way to the truck, and Nathan listened to every word, and behind his calm face, his mind was doing what it had always done, quietly, tirelessly running the angles. Because he knew men like Tyler Grant. He'd known 100 of them in and out of uniform. And he knew that a man like that, humiliated by silence, cornered by a peace he couldn't understand, obsessed with a wall that wouldn't push back a man like that did not stop. A man like that got worse. Nathan buckled Emma into the truck, checked her belt twice out of a habit older than she was, and pulled out of the lot into the gold Colorado evening. "Dad," Emma said as they drove, "you seem far away." He glanced at her. "Do I? You get a face when you're thinking about grown-up stuff." "I've got a face, huh?" "A faraway face." Nathan reached over and squeezed her hand once and made himself come back all the way back to the truck and the road and the small warm hand in his, and the only thing in this world he had left to protect. "I'm right here," he told her. "I'm not going anywhere." And he meant it as a promise. He always meant it as a promise. But some part of him, the watchful part, the part that had seen how these things went, knew that trouble had already decided to come for them, and that when it came, there would be nowhere left to walk away to. He drove his daughter home into the setting sun, an ordinary man in an old blue truck, and no one who passed him on that quiet road could have known, no one in that whole quiet town could have known that the calmest man in Colorado was already silently beginning to prepare. The silence didn't last. Nathan knew it wouldn't. Silence for a man like Tyler Grant was not an ending. It was an open wound, and a wound left open gets infected. It started 3 days later, and it started small. Nathan was leaving the hardware store on a Saturday morning, a bag of pipe fittings in one hand and Emma's hand in the other, when a man he'd never seen before stopped dead on the sidewalk and stared at him. "Hey," the man said. "Hey, you're that guy, the janitor guy." Nathan kept walking. "You are from the videos." The man fumbled his phone out, holding it up. "Can I get a my buddy's not gonna believe?" "Have a good day," Nathan said, and steered Emma around him. "He called you a coward, man," the stranger called after him, laughing, not even unkindly, just entertained. "You just gonna take that?" Emma looked up at her father. "Why does everybody know you now?" "They don't know me," Nathan said. "They think they do. It's different." "What's the difference?" He opened the truck door for her, lifted the pipe fittings into the bed. "Knowing somebody takes years, sweetheart. Thinking you know somebody takes about 30 seconds and a phone." But it was more than one man on a sidewalk, and Nathan understood that by Sunday, when he counted 4 separate cars slowing down outside his house. They weren't hiding it. That was the strange part. Kids, mostly teenagers, cruising past the little rented house on Locust Street where Nathan and Emma lived, phones up, filming the front porch like it was a landmark. One of them yelled something out the window. Nathan couldn't make out the words, but he didn't need to. He'd been the target of enough hostile reconnaissance in his life to know the shape of it, even when the shape was just bored kids doing something cruel because a man on the internet had told them it was funny. He pulled Emma back from the window. "Are those your friends?" she asked. "No, baby. Come here. Help me with dinner." That night, after she was asleep, Nathan sat at the kitchen table in the dark and finally did the thing he'd been avoiding. He borrowed the ancient laptop he kept for taxes and school forms, and he typed in the name, Tyler Grant. What came up made his stomach turn slowly over. It wasn't just the 2 videos anymore. It was a campaign. Tyler had made Nathan the villain and the joke of his entire channel. There were a dozen new posts, and every single one was about him. The coward who won't fight me. I went to his job, he hid. Exposing fake tough guys. Millions of views now, not thousands. Millions. And in every one, Tyler's face grinning righteous, telling the same story over and over, that there was a man in Colorado, a nobody, a maintenance worker, who talked a big game about protecting his family and then folded the second. A real man stepped up. Nathan read the comments for exactly 90 seconds before he closed the laptop. 90 seconds was enough. Enough to see the thing he'd spent 2 years building a wall against had a crack in it now. Enough to see strangers by the thousands deciding what kind of man he was. Enough to see 3 separate people who had somehow figured out where he lived and were bragging about it. He sat in the dark a long time, Then he did what he did with every threat. The way he'd been trained, he stopped feeling it and started assessing it. Feeling was a luxury. Assessment was survival. And the assessment was simple. This man was not going to stop on his own. He was feeding on Nathan now, and men who feed don't quit until the food is gone, or they are. The question was what Tyler wanted. And Nathan already knew because he'd seen it in the man's eyes in that school hallway, that raw, hungry bewilderment, that why won't you? Tyler didn't want to hurt Nathan. Not really. Tyler wanted Nathan to break. He wanted the wall to push back so he could prove the wall was just a man like any other. He was going to keep pushing harder and harder until Nathan reacted, until the calm cracked and gave Tyler the thing he needed, which was proof that the quiet man was afraid underneath, same as everyone else. And the only lever in the whole world that could make Nathan Brooks react was sleeping down the hall. Nathan's hands went very still on the table. "Not her," he said quietly to the dark. "You come at me all day, but not her." He didn't know yet that Tyler had already had the same thought. The next morning changed things. Nathan was at work up a ladder again when his phone buzzed with a number he didn't recognize. He almost let it go. Something made him answer. "Mr. Brooks," a woman's voice tight. "This is Diane Alvarez. I'm the principal over at Emma's Elementary. I need you to everything's fine. Emma's fine, I want to say that first." Nathan was already down the ladder, already moving. What happened? There was a man. In the parking lot at pickup. He had a camera. He was Mr. Brooks. He was asking the children if they knew Emma Brooks, by name, asking which one she was. The world went very quiet and very sharp, the way it used to before a door came off its hinges. "Where is she now?" "She's in my office. She's safe." Our resource officer walked the man off the property. He didn't, he left when we called it in. "But I thought you should—" "I'm coming," Nathan said. "Don't let her out of your sight, not for a second. I'm 9 minutes out." He made it in 6. I didn't run into the school. He wanted to. Every cell in his body wanted to. But he made himself walk because a man running scares a child, and he would not let Tyler Grant put fear on his daughter's face. He walked into that office calm as still water, and Emma looked up from the chair where she was coloring perfectly fine, perfectly safe, and said, "Dad, Miss Alvarez gave me a juice." "Did she?" Nathan crouched down, took his daughter's face gently in both hands, looked at her, checked her the way he'd checked 100 people in 100 worse places. "She's fine, she's fine. She's whole. She doesn't even know." That was nice of her. "There was a guy with a camera. Miss Alvarez said he wasn't supposed to be here." "He wasn't," Nathan agreed. "But he's gone now. You're okay." "I'm okay," Emma confirmed, and went back to coloring, and Nathan stood up and turned to the principal, and the calm on his face did not change at all, and that was somehow more frightening than any anger could have been. "I want everything you have," he said. "The car, a description, any footage from the lot." "The police already?" "I'll talk to the police. I want it too." Something in his voice made Diane Alvarez, who had been a principal for 19 years and thought she'd seen every kind of parent, take an involuntary step back. "Of course," she said. "Of course, Mr. Brooks." He took Emma home. He made her lunch. He sat with her while she ate, and he listened to her talk about the guy with the camera, the way she talked about everything as a small, strange thing that had happened. No weight to it, no wound. And he thanked God for that. Thanked God that at 9 years old, the horror of what had almost happened was invisible to her. And then, after she was down for a nap, Nathan Brooks walked out onto his back porch and stood very still and let himself feel it for exactly 1 minute. The rage. He'd kept it in a box for 2 years. For longer than that. The whole reason he'd left the teams, the whole reason he'd become a man who fixed boilers, was that he'd looked into himself one day and understood exactly how much of that box he had and how much it wanted out, and he'd decided that Emma deserved a father who kept the lid on. That was the deal he'd made. Nathan Brooks, who had done things in the dark that the softest citizens of this town could not imagine, would spend the rest of his life being gentle so that his daughter would never know what her father was capable of. Tyler Grant had just gone looking for Emma by name. The lid rattled. Nathan breathed. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. The way they'd taught him a lifetime ago. He let the minute pass. And when it was over, he put the lid back on, and he went inside, and he began quietly to do the thing he was better at than almost any man alive. He began to plan. He did not call Tyler. He did not post. He did not fire back. Instead, over the next several days, Nathan Brooks did what he had done before every operation of his career. He gathered information, and he prepared his ground, and he waited for his enemy to make the mistake that every reckless man eventually makes. He got Emma's routine changed. Different pickup, different time. A friend's mother he trusted named Carol, who agreed to walk Emma to her car every day. He varied his own route to work. He replaced the flimsy lock on the back door with something serious. None of it looked like fear. All of it looked like a careful man being careful. But a soldier would have recognized it instantly. Nathan was hardening his position, and he watched Tyler. Not in person. He didn't need to. Tyler broadcast his own movements to the world, hungry for attention, and Nathan let the man's own vanity be his surveillance. Every video told Nathan something. The dojo's location. The 4 or 5 young men who followed Tyler everywhere, who Nathan came to think of not as students, but as a crew hungry kids, worshipful, the kind who'd do something stupid if their leader told them to. Tyler's face was getting tighter, angrier, the swagger curdling into something meaner, as the one man he'd targeted refused again and again to break, because that was the thing Tyler couldn't stand. Nathan was winning, not with fists, with absence. Every day, Nathan did not react. Tyler got a little more unhinged, and the audience. This was the twist. Nathan hadn't expected the thing that shifted underneath the whole story. The audience started to notice. It happened slowly at first. A comment here and there. Somebody wrote under Tyler's latest rant, "Why are you so obsessed with this guy? He literally just wants to be left alone, LOL." It got a few hundred likes, then a few thousand. Somebody else wrote, "Going to his kid's school is insane, bro. This isn't a flex." That one climbed higher. And then a woman who'd been at the festival posted her own video from the crowd showing the original encounter from a different angle. And in her footage, you could see something. Tyler's carefully edited version had cut out. You could see Nathan crouching down afterward, wiping cotton candy off his daughter's face, talking to her gently, while a man screamed insults at his back. The caption read, "This is the coward. A dad protecting his kid from a bully. Who's the real man here?" It got 2 million views in a day. The tide quietly began to turn. Nathan didn't see most of it. But he felt it the way you feel weather change when Marcus came into the boiler room grinning one afternoon. "You seeing this?" Marcus said. "Seeing what? People are turning on him, man. On Grant. They're calling him out. There's like a whole thing now, hashtag leave the dad alone. You're a hero, dude." "I'm not a hero," Nathan said. "I'm a maintenance supervisor with a leaky boiler and a 9-year-old. Hand me the 1/4 inch." But Marcus wasn't wrong that the wind had shifted, and Nathan understood immediately what that meant. And it was not the good news Marcus thought it was. Because a man like Tyler Grant, whose entire self was built on the crowd's love, could survive being feared, could survive being hated. What he could not survive was being laughed at. And the crowd was starting to laugh at him, at the undefeated champion, so rattled by one silent maintenance worker that he'd stalked a child. That laughter was going to do to Tyler what nothing else could. It was going to push him past the edge. Nathan knew the way he'd always known these things, that they were now in the most dangerous stretch of the whole thing. A cornered animal that still has some pride is careful. A cornered animal that's lost its pride is deadly, because it no longer has anything to protect and nothing left to lose. Tyler was losing his pride by the hour. The threats started that week. They weren't from Tyler directly. Tyler was too smart for that, or thought he was. They were from the crew, the worshipful kids, and from anonymous accounts. And they came to the dojo's comment sections and spilled out into the town. Somebody keyed Nathan's truck in the school parking lot. Somebody left a dead bird on the porch, a stupid, ugly kid's idea of menace. Somebody called the school and made noise about Emma until the office started screening calls. Each one, Nathan logged. Each one he reported calmly to a detective named Ruiz, who was starting to look at Nathan across her desk with a growing puzzled respect, because most victims of harassment were frightened and scattered. And this one showed up with dates, times plate numbers and screenshots organized in a folder like a man building a legal case, one careful brick at a time. "You've done this before," Detective Ruiz said to him on his third visit. "Done what?" "This." She tapped the folder. "This is Mr. Brooks. This is better documentation than half my colleagues turn in. Most people bring me a shoebox of feelings. You brought me a case." She looked at him. "What did you say you did before the school?" "Odds and ends," Nathan said. "Some government work." "Uh-huh," said Ruiz, who did not believe him for 1 second and let it go and made a mental note. She was the second person now to look at the still careful, unbreakable maintenance man and think, that's not what a maintenance man looks like. The third person was Tyler Grant, and Tyler's version of that same suspicion was eating him alive. Nathan learned the depth of it by accident. He was at the grocery store, Emma pushing the cart the way she liked to, standing on the bottom rail when he came around an aisle, and there was Tyler. No camera this time. That was the first thing Nathan noticed, and it made the hair on his neck stand up because Tyler without a camera was a Tyler with no audience to perform for, and a man like that off script was unpredictable. Tyler saw him. Went still. For a second, neither man moved. "Emma," Nathan said quietly, not taking his eyes off Tyler. "Go grab the cereal you like. The one with the toucan. I'll be right here." Emma, who had never seen Tyler Grant and had no idea who the man staring at her father was, hopped off the cart. "The one you said had too much sugar." "That's the one. Special occasion." "2 special occasions this week," Emma said suspiciously. But she went, and Nathan waited until she was around the corner and out of earshot before he took 1 step toward Tyler and lowered his voice to something almost gentle. "You went to her school." Tyler's jaw worked. Up close without the crowd, he looked younger and more tired, and there was something jittery in him. It was content. I wasn't gonna." "You asked children which one was my daughter." "I wasn't gonna do anything to her," Tyler said. And the fact that he'd clearly rehearsed this defense, that some part of him had known it was over a line and prepared an excuse, told Nathan everything. "Listen to me very carefully," Nathan said, and his voice did not rise, did not shake, stayed level and low and absolutely calm. And it was that calm, that impossible calm, that made Tyler go pale. "I have let you say anything you want about me. I've let you come to my work. I've let your people threaten me. I've let all of it go because none of it matters. You want to know why none of it matters? Because none of it can touch the only thing I care about." Nathan took one more small step. "You went near the thing I care about. Is that a threat?" Tyler said, trying to find his footing, trying to get back on the script where he was the one in control. "You threatening me, I got witnesses. I could—" "It's not a threat. I don't threaten people. A threat is what you do when you want something and you're not sure you can take it." Nathan looked at him, and for one unguarded second, he let Tyler see just a fraction of what was underneath the maintenance shirt, just a sliver of the man he'd spent 2 years hiding, and Tyler Grant, undefeated 111 wins, felt his own body go cold in a way it never had in any ring. "I'm just telling you where the line is, so that later nobody can say you didn't know." They stood there. A woman with a cart edged past them, oblivious. Somewhere an intercom announced a special on ground beef. "You don't scare me," Tyler said. But his voice cracked on the last word just slightly, and both men heard it. "I know," Nathan said, almost kindly. "That's your whole problem. You've never once in your life been scared of the right thing." Emma came back around the corner, hugging a box of cereal to her chest. "Dad, they had the big box." "Perfect." Nathan didn't look away from Tyler for one more second. A last quiet, unmistakable message. And then he turned to his daughter, and his whole face changed, softened, opened up like a window. "That's a great box. Come on, let's find the milk." He walked away with his daughter, and he did not look back. And Tyler Grant stood alone in the cereal aisle, with his heart going like a fist on a door, and understood dimly for the first time that he had made a terrible mistake, and had no idea how to stop making it. Because that was the trap Tyler was in, and it was a trap of his own building. He'd gone too public to back down. He'd told the whole world that Nathan Brooks was a coward, and the whole world was starting to laugh at him for it. and the only way Tyler Grant knew to win back a crowd was to escalate. Retreating was death. Apologizing was death. The only direction a man like Tyler could go was forward harder, and forward led exactly one place, and some animal part of him could feel the cliff coming and could not make his feet stop. That night home again, Nathan tucked Emma in and sat on the edge of her bed a while. "Dad." "Yeah, sweetheart." "That man in the store, the one you were talking to." Emma's eyes were half closed. "You knew him." Nathan went still. He was always surprised by how much she saw. She was so much sharper than the world gave 9-year-olds credit for. So much like her mother. "Sort of," he said. "Was he a bad guy?" Nathan thought about how to answer that. He'd thought a lot over 2 years about how much truth a child could hold, and when to hand it to her, and how. "You know what?" he said finally. "I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's a sad guy who does bad things. There's a difference. Not much of one from the outside, but it's there." "What's the difference?" "A bad guy wants to hurt people because he likes it. A sad guy hurts people because he's hurting and he doesn't know how to stop. And hurting other people is the only thing that makes the hurt quiet for a minute." Nathan smoothed his blanket. "Your mom taught me that. She saw the difference in people better than anybody I ever met." Emma was quiet a moment. Then, "Do we have to be scared of him?" And here was the question, the real one, the one that mattered more than all of it. And Nathan looked his daughter in the eye and gave her the truest answer he had. "No," he said. "You never have to be scared. Not while I'm here. That's not your job being scared. That's my job. I do the worrying so you don't have to. You just get to be 9. "Okay." "Okay," Emma said, already drifting. "I've got you," Nathan said quietly. "I've always got you." She was asleep before he finished the sentence. He sat with her a while longer, the way he did most nights, and he watched her breathe and the box inside him rattled its lid, and he made himself the same promise he made every night, which was that he would carry every ounce of the weight so that she would never feel a single gram of it. But even as he made the promise, the watchful part of him, the part that had never fully come home from the war, was doing the cold arithmetic, and the arithmetic said, "It's coming. Whatever this is, it's coming, and it's coming soon, and it's going to force your hand, and when it does, you're going to have to decide whether the man you buried 2 years ago is really dead or just sleeping." He did not know yet how right he was or how soon. The escalation came from a direction Nathan hadn't fully guarded because it came dressed as good news. Emma's school was having a fundraiser. A big one, an evening thing at the community center on the far side of town. A silent auction, a bake sale, a talent show. The whole small-town machine cranked up to raise money for new library books. Emma was over the moon about it. She'd been practicing a piano piece for the talent show for 3 weeks, a slightly wobbly rendition of a song her mother used to play, and every time she practiced it, Nathan had to leave the room for a minute because it took him somewhere he couldn't afford to go and come back from in front of her. "You have to come," Emma told him. "You have to. I'm going third. After the kid who does magic and the girl with the flute." "I wouldn't miss it," Nathan said. "You know I wouldn't." Front row. Front and center. He should have thought about it more. That was what he'd tell himself later in the dark, in the part of the night when a man rehearses his mistakes. He'd been so focused on the school, on the house, on the daily routes, on hardening the ground around their ordinary days, that he'd let the fundraiser feel safe simply because it was joyful. He'd let his guard down exactly where his guard mattered most, because his daughter was going to play her mother's song, and he wanted for one night to just be a father in a folding chair. And Tyler Grant, cornered, laughed at desperate running out of road, had seen the same event Nathan had seen. Had seen the whole town would be there. Had seen his one chance to force the confrontation the crowd was demanding on a night when Nathan Brooks could not simply walk away, because walking away would mean walking away from Emma. Nathan found out the fundraiser was in danger the day before it happened. Denny caught him in the hall again, and this time the vice principal wasn't uncomfortable. He was scared. "Nathan, you need to see this." He held up his phone, and Nathan watched Tyler Grant staring into the camera. No swagger left in him now, Just a hard, bright, manic thing that Nathan recognized from 100 cornered men say the words that made the whole thing real. So here's the deal, Colorado. Tomorrow night. Big community event. Everybody's favorite tough guy dad's gonna be there with his kid. And I'm gonna be there too. And this time in front of everybody, in front of his own daughter, we're gonna find out once and for all whether this man is what he says he is, or whether he's exactly the coward I've been telling you he is. Be there. You won't want to miss it. The video had 400,000 views. It had been up 2 hours. Nathan looked at it for a long moment, and Denny, watching his face, said, Nathan, what do you want to do? Should we cancel? I can call Diane. We can... Don't cancel, Nathan said quietly. What? You cancel, he wins. You cancel and Emma doesn't get to play her song, and a couple hundred kids don't get their library because one broken man made a video. Nathan handed the phone back. No, the fundraiser happens. But he said he's gonna be there. He said, Nathan, what if he does something, with all those kids there, with Emma there? Nathan was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice had changed, not louder, not harder, but somehow deeper, older, coming from a place Denny had never heard in him. He's not going to do anything to those kids, Nathan said. Or to Emma, I promise you that. How can you promise that? Nathan looked at him. And for just a second, Denny saw the thing his grandfather had had, the Normandy stillness. The look of a man who had already been to the worst place there is and come back with something the rest of us don't have a name for. Because, Nathan said, I'm going to be there too. And then he did something he hadn't done in 2 years. That night, after Emma was asleep, he went into the back of his bedroom closet and he pulled down a locked case from the top shelf. A case Emma had asked about exactly once and been told held old work things. And he set it on the bed and he sat and looked at it for a long, long time without opening it. I wasn't going to bring a weapon to his daughter's fundraiser. That wasn't what the case was about. The case was about a decision. Opening it meant admitting that the man he'd buried might have to breathe again. It meant standing at the edge of the box he'd kept shut for 2 years and putting his hand on the lid. He thought about Emma at the piano. He thought about Tyler's face going cold in the cereal aisle. He thought about a man cornered and laughing and out of road. I thought about the promise. Nothing. Ever. That's my only job. Then Nathan Brooks put the case back on the shelf. Unopened, because he understood something Tyler never would. That the most dangerous man in any room is not the one holding a weapon. It's the one who has learned through blood and years and loss that he doesn't need one. He closed the closet. He went and stood in the doorway of his daughter's room and watched her sleep the way he did every night. And he made her the promise one more time, silently in the dark. And then Nathan Brooks, former commander of one of the most elite units his country had ever put into the field, a man who had walked away from all of it to fix boilers and pack lunches and be soft for the sake of one small girl, began quietly and without fear and without mercy to get ready for tomorrow night. The night of the fundraiser came cold and clear, and Nathan Brooks arrived 40 minutes early because a man who arrives early controls the room, and a man who arrives on time is a guest in someone else's plan. He came in his one good shirt, with Emma in a green dress she'd picked herself, her hair braided the careful, clumsy way he'd learned to do it from a video, because Sarah had been the one who knew how, and now it was one more thing he'd had to teach himself. Emma was vibrating with nerves and excitement, clutching the sheet music she didn't need, because she knew the song by heart. "What if I mess up?" she whispered as they walked in. "Then you mess up," Nathan said. "And you keep going. That's the whole secret to everything, sweetheart. You mess up and you keep going." That's not a very good secret. It's the only one that works. But even as he said it, even as he smiled down at her, Nathan's eyes were moving. Cataloging. The community center had 2 main exits, plus the kitchen door in back, and the emergency door by the stage. Roughly 300 people already filtering in folding chairs in rows, facing a low stage, a bake sale along the east wall, the silent auction tables along the west. He clocked the 2 off-duty officers the school had hired for the event, standing near the front doors, looking bored. He clocked Detective Ruiz out of uniform near the coffee, and understood that she'd come on her own time, because she'd read the same video everyone had, and had a cop's feeling about how the night might go. Their eyes met across the room. She gave him a small nod. He gave her a smaller one back. He got Emma settled backstage with the other kids and the frazzled parent volunteer running the talent show. He crouched down to her level. "Third," he said. "After the magic and the flute. Front row. Front and center. I'll be right there. If you get scared, you find my face and you play to me. Okay, just me. Nobody else in the room." "Just you," Emma said, and hugged him hard around the neck, and Nathan held her a second longer than he needed to, and then let her go. He took his seat in the front row, and he waited. Tyler Grant did not come in the front doors. Nathan had known he wouldn't. A man who wants a confrontation walks in the front. A man who wants an ambush finds another way. And somewhere in the back of Nathan's mind, the cold professional part that had been running scenarios for 2 days, a small alarm was already ringing because the fundraiser felt too easy. The talent show started. The magic kid dropped his cards, and everyone laughed kindly. The flute girl played something squeaky and got huge applause from her family. And Tyler didn't come, and that was wrong. That was worse than if he'd come, because Tyler Grant was a man who lived for entrances, and a man like that doesn't skip his own advertised showdown, unless the showdown he's actually planning is somewhere the cameras aren't. Emma played her mother's song. She only stumbled once near the middle, and Nathan saw her eyes flick up in a flash of panic, and he leaned forward and mouthed, "Keep going." And she found the note, and she kept going, and she finished, and the room applauded, and Nathan Brooks clapped for his daughter with tears standing in his eyes and a growing certainty in his gut that something was very wrong. The certainty crystallized 20 minutes later when he couldn't find her. The talent show had ended. The kids had scattered back into the crowd to find their parents. Emma should have come straight to him. She always came straight to him, and she didn't. And Nathan was on his feet before he'd consciously decided to stand moving through the crowd with a calm that cost him everything, scanning. He found the parent volunteer. "Emma, my daughter. Green dress. Where'd she go after her song?" "Oh, she..." The woman looked around vaguely. "She said a man told her you wanted her to meet you out back. By the loading door. I assumed." Nathan was already moving. The world narrowed. Everything Nathan had trained for his whole life came online at once the way it always had. The way it never fully left a man like him. Heart rate dropping instead of climbing, vision sharpening at the edges, time going thick and slow. He did not run, because running told the enemy you were coming. He moved fast and silent through the kitchen, past a startled caterer to the back loading door that stood open to the cold night, and he heard before he saw his daughter's voice. "I want my dad," Emma was saying, not crying, Nathan's daughter. God bless her. God bless Sarah for making her was not crying, she was angry. "You said my dad wanted me. You lied. I want to go back inside." And then Tyler Grant's voice jagged wound too tight. "Your dad's coming, kid. Don't worry. Your dad and me got some business." Nathan stepped through the door. Tyler was there. And so were 4 of them. The crew, the worshipful, hungry kids Nathan had cataloged from the videos spread in a loose arc across the loading area, and Emma stood in the middle of it, with one of them holding her lightly by the arm. And the second, Nathan saw that hand on his daughter, something in him that had been asleep for 2 years opened its eyes. But his face didn't change. That was the thing. His face stayed calm. "Let go of my daughter," Nathan said. Tyler spun around, and his grin came back manic and relieved, because finally, here was the confrontation. Here was the man cornered, where he couldn't walk away. "There he is. There's the tough guy. I told you all he'd come running when..." "Let go of her," Nathan said again, in exactly the same tone. And the kid holding Emma's arm, who was maybe 19 and had signed up to be a tough guy's hype man, and not for this, actually loosened his grip on instinct, because there was something in the man's voice that reached past the brain and spoke directly to the animal underneath. "Nobody's hurting her," Tyler said quickly. "See, nobody touched her. I'm not a monster. I just needed you here, where you couldn't run, where everybody could..." He gestured, and Nathan saw the phone on a little tripod near the wall, its red light on. Of course it was recording, of course this was still even now content. Where everybody could finally see. "Emma," Nathan said, and his voice softened, just for her, just 1 degree. "Come here to me. Right now." Emma pulled her arm free of the loosened grip and ran to her father, and Nathan put her behind him with one hand. One smooth motion, positioning her exactly where she'd be safest, his body between her and all 5 of them. The same instinct that had positioned her at the festival, at the school, everywhere for 2 years. "Go back inside," he told her quietly, not turning around. "Find Detective Ruiz, the lady from the coffee. Tell her where I am. Can you do that for me?" "Dad." "Can you do that for me, Emma? Look at me." He crouched for 1/2 second, met her eyes, and everything. He went into his face, total calm, total certainty, nothing to be afraid of. "I need you to be brave and go get help. That's your job right now. Go." She went. She ran back through the kitchen door, and Nathan heard her small feet slapping the floor, and he waited until the sound of them was gone, until she was clear, until his daughter was out of the blast radius of whatever came next. And then Nathan Brooks turned to face 5 men in an empty lot, and the last 2 years fell away from him like a coat he'd been wearing, and for the first time since he'd come home, he stopped holding back. "You shouldn't have brought her into this," Nathan said. His voice was very quiet now, almost gentle, and that gentleness was the most frightening thing any of the 5 of them had ever heard. "Everything else I could forgive. This I'm going to remember. Big talk." Tyler's voice had an edge of hysteria in it now. He could feel the night getting away from him, feel that the man in front of him was not behaving the way cornered men behave, and his answer to that fear was the only answer he'd ever had, which was to attack. "Get him. Just get him. Rough him up. For the camera. Let's see the tough guy." The 4 young men looked at each other. And there was a moment Nathan saw it would remember it, where the whole thing could still have ended, where these kids could have felt how wrong it all was and walked away. But that was the tragedy of a man like Tyler. He'd spent years teaching these boys that violence was strength and hesitation was weakness, and now they'd believe it right up to the moment it broke their bones. The first one came at Nathan fast, a big kid telegraphing a right hand from a mile away. What happened next took less than 4 seconds, and not one of the people who eventually watched the security footage, the real footage, not Tyler's phone, the community center's own camera, mounted above the loading door that Tyler in his tunnel vision had never noticed, could ever quite describe it afterward. They all said the same useless things. It was too fast. He barely moved. It was like the other guys were falling down on their own. Because Nathan Brooks did not fight the way people fight in videos. There was no showmanship in it, no wasted motion, nothing for a camera. He simply did what 22 years and 100 real engagements had burned into his nervous system below the level of thought. He stepped inside the first kid's telegraphed punch, redirected the arm with a touch, and used the kid's own momentum to put him face first into the pavement, already turning before the boy landed, because there were 3 more, and the whole science of it was to never stop moving, to treat 5 men as a single system and disassemble it. The second one he took at the elbow and the shoulder. 2 points of contact, and the kid folded around his own arm with a yelp and went down and stayed down. Not badly hurt. That was the astonishing part. The part Detective Ruiz would fixate on later. Not badly hurt at all. Just completely instantly, helplessly neutralized like a machine switched off. The third one had a moment to be afraid, and used it to swing wild, and Nathan slipped it without seeming to move his feet, and tapped him once precisely at the side of the neck, and the kid's legs stopped working, and he sat down hard on the cold ground, conscious, stunned, done. The fourth one didn't attack at all. The fourth one, 19 years old, the one who'd been holding Emma's arm, took one look at the 3 bodies on the ground and the calm man standing among them, who hadn't so much as changed his breathing, and he put his hands up and backed away, and Nathan let him. "Sit down," Nathan told him, not unkindly. "Stay down, you're done. You did a stupid thing tonight, but you're a kid, and you're going to go home to your mother. Sit down." The kid sat down. 4 seconds. Maybe 5. And it was over, and Tyler Grant stood alone against the wall next to his little recording phone, with its red light still on, and stared at the wreckage of everything he thought he knew about the world. "What?" Tyler's voice was barely working. "What are you who?" Nathan turned to face him, and he did not attack. That was the thing Tyler would never forget, would think about for the rest of his life. The man who had just dismantled 4 attackers in the time it takes to sneeze did not lay one finger on the man who'd taken his daughter. He simply walked toward Tyler Grant, slow and calm and unhurried. And Tyler, undefeated, 111 wins, the toughest man he'd ever known himself to be, felt his back hit the wall and his whole body flood with an emotion he had spent his entire life making other people feel and had never once felt himself. He felt fear, real fear, the kind that has nothing to do with a fight. "Please," Tyler said. The word came out of him before he knew it was coming. "Please, man, I'm not going to hurt you," Nathan said. And Tyler almost sobbed with relief. And then Nathan said the thing that was worse than any beating, the thing that landed harder than any punch Tyler had thrown in 100 fights. "You're not worth hurting. You never were. That's what you couldn't understand this whole time. You kept trying to make me fight you because if I fought you, that would have meant you mattered enough to fight. And you don't. You're just a scared, sad man who hurts people so he doesn't have to feel how small he is. And now the whole world's going to see it." He nodded at the phone. At the little red light, still recording. Everything. Tyler's face crawled as he understood. And that was the exact moment the loading door burst open, and Detective Ruiz came through it fast with her weapon drawn and her voice cracking across the lot. "Police hands, everybody hands where I can see them," with the 2 off-duty officers right behind her, and behind them a crowd, a growing crowd drawn by the commotion phones already coming up. For a moment, it was chaos. Ruiz took in the scene, 3 young men on the ground, a 4th sitting with his hands up. Tyler pinned against the wall by nothing but a calm man's presence, and Nathan Brooks standing in the middle of all of it, with not a hair out of place, and his hands loose and open at his sides. "On the ground!" one of the officers shouted at Nathan, because of course, the calm man standing over 4 downed bodies was the obvious threat. "Get on the ground now!" And Nathan Brooks, commander of men, decorated in ceremonies he'd never spoken of, got down on his knees on the cold pavement and laced his fingers behind his head without a word of protest, because he knew exactly how it looked, and he would rather be arrested 100 times than have his daughter's fundraiser end with him resisting police in front of a crowd. He didn't do anything. It was the 19-year-old, the one who'd sat down scrambling to his feet. "It wasn't him, officer. It was us. We jumped him. He was protecting his kid, that guy." He pointed a shaking finger at Tyler. "That guy took his kid. We grabbed his little girl. It was all him." "Quiet," Ruiz said, but she was already looking at Nathan on his knees and at the phone on the tripod, and the pieces were coming together fast in her cop's mind. And that was when the older man pushed through the crowd. He was tall, silver-haired, straight-backed in a way that civilian life never quite gives a man. And he'd come to the fundraiser because his granddaughter went to the school, and he'd followed the commotion out back like everyone else. And now he stopped dead at the edge of the light and stared at the man kneeling on the pavement with his hands behind his head. For a long moment the old man didn't move, didn't breathe. He just stared like he was seeing a ghost. Then he said in a voice gone strange and hoarse, "My God, Brooks." Nathan closed his eyes. Nathan Brooks. The old man came forward, and the crowd parted for him without knowing why, the way crowds part for a certain kind of authority. "It's son, it's Colonel Ray Hutchins, 3rd Battalion. You—" His voice broke. "I put your name in for the Navy Cross. I read the citation into the record myself. You—" He turned to Detective Ruiz, and his voice changed entirely, became the voice of a man who had commanded thousands of voice that filled the whole lot and left no room for argument. "Detective, I don't know what you think you're looking at here, but this man on the ground is Lieutenant Commander Nathan Brooks. He commanded a special operations unit that ran 41 combat missions in some of the worst places on this earth. He personally led the rescue of 9 American hostages out of a situation that should have killed everyone involved." The colonel's voice shook. "He carried 2 of my men out on his own back. This man is one of the finest warriors this country has ever produced, and you've got him on his knees in a parking lot." The silence that fell over that crowd was total. 300 phones were up now. 300 people who had spent 2 weeks watching a YouTuber call this man a coward, who had slowed their cars past his house, who had laughed at the video, who had decided they knew exactly what kind of man Nathan Brooks was. 300 people stood in dead silence and looked at the truth. Detective Ruiz lowered her weapon. She looked at Nathan, still kneeling, still calm, still not saying a word in his own defense. "Mr. Brooks," she said quietly, "you can get up now." Nathan got to his feet. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at the colonel. He didn't bask in it, didn't straighten with pride, didn't do a single one of the things a man might do in the moment the whole world finally sees him. He looked instead toward the kitchen door, where a small figure in a green dress had appeared, held back by a kind woman's hands, watching her father with enormous eyes. "Where's my daughter?" Nathan said. "That's all I want. Where's Emma?" Emma broke free and ran to him across the lot, and Nathan caught her up and held her, and over her shoulder he finally looked at the old colonel, and something passed between the two men that no one else in that crowd could read. 20 years of history of blood, of things that happen in the dark and are never spoken of in the light. "Colonel," Nathan said quietly. "Son," the colonel answered, and his eyes were wet, and Tyler Grant, still pinned against the wall, now with an officer's hand on his shoulder and handcuffs coming out. Watch the man he'd spent 2 weeks calling a coward. Hold his daughter in the center of 300 silent people, and finally understood the size of what he'd done. He hadn't picked a fight with a maintenance man. He hadn't even picked a fight with a hero. He'd picked a fight with a man so far beyond him, so much stronger in every way that mattered, that the strength had been completely invisible to him, because Tyler had spent his whole life believing that strength was the thing you showed, and he had never once, until this exact moment, understood that the strongest thing a man can do is choose every single day for 2 years, for the sake of one small girl, not to show it at all. "You had it the whole time," Tyler said. The words came out of him in a kind of daze, barely above a whisper, as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. He wasn't even talking to Nathan, not really. He was talking to himself, to the whole architecture of his life, falling down around him. "You could have ended me at the fair, in the store, any time. You had it the whole time, and you just let me." Nathan looked at him over Emma's shoulder, and there was no triumph in his face. If anything, there was something that looked almost like sorrow. "That's right," Nathan said. "I had it the whole time. And you want to know the difference between you and me, Tyler? The one that matters." He held his daughter a little tighter. "You needed everyone to know how strong you were. I needed exactly one person to never have to find out." The colonel put a hand on Nathan's shoulder. The detective started reading Tyler his rights. And the crowd, 300 strong, stood in the cold under the loading door lights, and not one of them was laughing now. Emma pulled back just far enough to look at her father's face. "Dad," she whispered, "those men said you were in the war. A colonel said. Is that true? Were you a hero?" And Nathan Brooks, who had carried men on his back and pulled hostages out of hell and buried more friends than any man should, who had spent 2 years fixing boilers so his daughter would never have to know any of it, looked at her, and for the first time in 2 years, he told her the truth. But he told it his way. "A long time ago," he said softly, "I had a job where I helped people who were in trouble. And it was a hard job, and I'm not going to lie to you and say it wasn't. But then your mom and I had you, and I quit that job. You know why?" Emma shook her head. "Because I already had the most important job there was." He touched her nose the way he always did. "Being your dad. That's the only hero I ever wanted to be. And I'm still on the clock." Emma buried her face in his neck, and Nathan carried his daughter back inside through a crowd that parted for him now, not in mockery, but in something close to reverence, past the silent auction and the bake sale and the folding chairs, and he did not look back at the man in handcuffs, because that man no longer had any power over a single thing in Nathan Brooks's life. Behind him, Detective Ruiz secured the phone on the tripod with its red light still glowing, the phone that had recorded absolutely everything. The abduction, the confrontation, the 4 seconds that ended it, and the terrible quiet truth of what Nathan Brooks had said against that wall. It was, she thought, going to be a very interesting piece of evidence. She had no idea yet just how far it would travel, or what it would do to the man in the handcuffs, or the strange and unlikely thing it would eventually make of him. She only knew, watching the calm father carry his daughter back into the warmth and the light, that in 19 years of police work, she had never once seen a man win so completely by refusing for so long to fight at all. The footage got out by morning, and it got out fast, and it did not get out the way Tyler Grant had spent 2 weeks praying his content would spread. Detective Ruiz hadn't leaked it. She was too careful for that, too by the book, and she knew a case this clean deserved to be kept clean. But 300 people had stood in that parking lot with their phones up, and by the time Nathan Brooks woke at 4:47 the next morning, the same as always, and made the coffee and packed the lunch, the whole country had already decided it had a new hero. The clips were everywhere. The colonel's voice cracking as he read out 41 combat missions, the 19-year-old boy shaking as he pointed at Tyler and said, "We grabbed his little girl." And most of all, the thing that broke the internet's heart clean. In half the moment, Nathan Brooks got down on his knees on the cold pavement and laced his hands behind his head without a word of complaint, because a man who has nothing to prove doesn't argue with a scared cop pointing a gun. But Nathan didn't see any of it. He didn't own the kind of phone that showed him such things, and he wouldn't have looked if he did. He got Emma up the same way he always did. Morning sunshine. She groaned and pulled the blanket over her head, and for one perfect second, the world was exactly the size of that bedroom, and nothing that had happened in the parking lot existed at all. "It's still nighttime," she mumbled. "It's not still nighttime. Come on, school." She sat up, and then she remembered the way children remember things all at once, and her face got serious. "Dad, is that man going to jail?" Nathan sat on the edge of her bed. He'd known this conversation was coming. He'd thought about it half the night lying awake listening to her breathe down the hall. "I think so," he said. "A judge is going to decide. He did some things that are against the law, and there's a video that shows he did them so." "Good," Emma said with the flat, uncomplicated justice of a 9-year-old. Nathan didn't answer right away. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You don't think it's good?" she asked, reading him the way she always did. "I think what he did was wrong," Nathan said carefully. "And I think there should be consequences for it. Those two things I'm sure about. But good." He paused. "You know, when your mom was alive, she used to say that wanting bad things to happen to bad people feels good for about a minute, and then it just makes you a little bit smaller inside. Every time. She was almost always right about stuff like that." Emma considered this with the total seriousness she brought to everything. "So we're not happy he's going to jail." "We're not sad," Nathan said. "But we don't celebrate it either. He's still a person who did something terrible, and who scared you, and who I'm never going to fully forgive for that part. But still a person. There's a difference between wanting justice and wanting revenge, Emma. Justice is about making things right. Revenge is about making yourself feel big. And they can look almost exactly the same from the outside. The trick is knowing which one's driving." "That's a lot of thinking for so early," Emma said. Nathan laughed and the seriousness broke and he stood up. Yeah, it is. Get dressed. I laid out your clothes." The trouble found him at work the way trouble always did now. He'd barely clocked in when Denny practically ran down the hall to find him, and this time the vice principal wasn't scared. He was lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. Nathan, do you have any idea there are news vans in the parking lot? 2 of them. They want to talk to you." "Tell them no." "Nathan, you're famous. Like actually famous. The video's got, I don't even know, 40 million views. People are calling you the silent warrior. There's a somebody made a shirt." "Somebody made a shirt," Nathan repeated. "There's a shirt." Nathan set down his tool bag. He rubbed his face with both hands the way he did every morning in the dark before the day started. And for a moment, Denny saw how tired the man underneath the calm actually was. "Denny," he said, "I need you to do me a favor. I need you to go out there, and I need you to tell those news people that Nathan Brooks has no comment now or ever. I need you to tell them there's no story here, just a guy who fixes boilers and picks up his kid. Can you do that for me?" "But Nathan, this is people would kill for this. You could..." "I could what?" Nathan looked at him, and there was no anger in it. Just a bone-deep weariness. "Go on TV. Tell the whole world the things that man read out in that parking lot. Let a bunch of strangers make me into a hero for a week until they get bored and find a new one." He shook his head. I spent 2 years making sure my daughter got to grow up in a quiet house with a quiet dad. 2 weeks ago, a man decided to take that from me for clicks. I'm not going to hand the rest of it over to the news for the same reason. No comment. That's the whole story. There isn't any more. Denny stared at him a long moment. Then something in his face changed, softened into a kind of respect that went deeper than the star-struck excitement of a minute before. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, Nathan. No comment. I'll tell him. Thank you. For what it's worth." Denny hesitated at the door. "My granddad never talked about Normandy either. I used to think it was because it was too terrible. But I'm starting to think maybe it was something else. Maybe some things you did so that other people wouldn't ever have to. And talking about it would kind of ruin the whole point." Nathan looked at him. And for once he didn't deflect, didn't change the subject, didn't put the wall back up. "Your granddad sounds like he was a good man," he said. "Yeah," Denny said. "He was." And he went to send the news vans away. The case moved fast, because the case was easy. There is not much for a defense attorney to work with when his client live-streamed himself, luring a child away from her father under false pretenses on a phone he set up himself that recorded the whole thing in high definition. The abduction charge alone was serious. The 4 young men from the crew, faced with the footage, folded one after another, and every one of them told the same story, that Tyler had planned it, that Tyler had told the youngest one exactly what to say to Emma, to get her to come, that the whole thing had been Tyler's idea from the start. The 19-year-old, whose name turned out to be Cole, asked to speak to Nathan before the arraignment. Nathan almost said no. Then he thought about the kid sitting down in the parking lot, hands up, and he thought about Emma's voice saying, "He's not a bad guy, he's a sad guy," and he said yes. They met in a bare room at the county building, Cole on one side of a table, Nathan on the other, a lawyer hovering nervously in the corner. "I'm not going to ask you to forgive me," Cole said. He couldn't look up. His hands were shaking. "I know I held her arm. I held your little girl's arm. I can't stop seeing it. I got a little sister. If somebody did to her what I—" His voice cracked. "I don't know why I did it. He made everything feel like a game, like nothing was real, like it was all just for the camera, and nobody actually got hurt." Nathan was quiet for a long time. "How old are you, Cole?" 19. "You know what I was doing at 19? Nathan said. "Stupid things, dangerous things, things I'm not proud of. I had a guy, a sergeant, who grabbed me by the collar one day and told me I was going to get somebody killed if I didn't grow up, and it made me so mad. I hated him for it." Nathan folded his hands on the table. "He was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because he was right, and I was young, and being young isn't an excuse, but it is a reason, and there's a difference." Cole looked up, finally eyes red. "You held my daughter's arm," Nathan said, and his voice hardened, and Cole flinched. "I'm never going to be okay with that. I want you to carry it. I want it to keep you up at night for a good long while, because that's how you know you're not the kind of person who does it twice." Then slowly, the hardness eased. "But you also let go when I told you to. And you sat down. And you stood up in front of 300 people and a cop with a gun, and you told the truth when the easy thing would have been to run. That took something. That was the beginning of a man in you, right there in the worst moment of your life." He stood. "So here's what I'll do. I'll tell the judge you cooperated. I'll tell her you're a kid who got pulled into something by a man who should have known better. I won't ask her to go easy, but I won't ask her to bury you either. What you do with that is up to you." Cole put his face in his hands and wept, and Nathan Brooks walked out of the room, and the lawyer in the corner, who had seen a great many things in a great many rooms like that. One had to turn away and clear his throat, because he had never once seen a victim do what this man had just done. Tyler's world came apart in pieces, and it came apart fast. The sponsors went first. They always go first. The supplement company that had paid Tyler to flex their protein powder in his videos issued a statement within 48 hours, severing all ties and condemning in the strongest terms. The gym equipment brand followed the same afternoon. The management company that had booked his seminars and his appearances stopped returning his calls and then formally dropped him, and then in the way of these things put out its own statement. making very sure everyone understood they'd never really approved of him at all. The dojo emptied out next. Grant Combat Academy, where winners are made, watched its students disappear one by one, pulled by parents who'd seen the footage, who'd realized the man they were paying to teach their children discipline had abducted a little girl to feed his own broken ego. Within a month, the place that had once had a waiting list couldn't cover its rent. The banner came down. The lease went unpaid. The whole monument Tyler had built to himself, the entire cathedral of his own importance, folded up and blew away like it had never been there at all. And the crowd. The crowd. Tyler had lived and breathed and starved for his whole life. The crowd whose love had been the only thing that ever made him feel real. The crowd turned on him with the exact same appetite it had once turned on Nathan. The videos that had gotten Tyler millions of views calling Nathan a coward were now clipped and quoted and mocked in 1,000 new videos calling Tyler a monster. The internet, which had briefly made Tyler a king, dragged him through the streets and left him for dead. And it did it laughing. Because that was the thing Tyler had never understood about the crowd. He worshipped, it didn't love you. It only ever loved the show. And when you became the villain of the show, it ate you with exactly the same joy it had once cheered you. He sat in a holding cell and watched his life end on the news, and he did not understand yet that the ending of that life was the only thing that could ever have saved him. The prosecutor wanted to make an example of him. Nathan understood that impulse. Detective Ruiz understood it too, and told Nathan as much when she came by the house one evening to go over the case, sitting at the kitchen table, while Emma did homework in the next room. "He's looking at real time," Ruiz said. "The abduction charge, the conspiracy, the fact that he organized 4 other people to assault you. The DA wants the max. And between you and me, Mr. Brooks, I want him to get it. What he did to your daughter." She shook her head. "I've got kids. I don't have a lot of professional distance on this one." "How much time?" Nathan asked. "With the max could be 8 to 10 years. Maybe more depending on the judge." Nathan was quiet, turning his coffee cup slowly in his hands. "You don't look happy about that," Ruiz observed. "Should I be?" "Most people would be. Man scares your kid, threatens your life, humiliates you in front of the whole country. Most people would want him to rot. I spent a long time around men who wanted other men to rot," Nathan said. "On both sides. I watched what it did to them. It's a fire that never goes out and never keeps you warm." He set the cup down. "Detective, can I ask you something? The kids, Cole and the others, what are they looking at?" Cole cooperated. First-time offenders, all of them pulled in by an adult who manipulated them. Probably probation community service. The DA's not interested in ruining 4 teenagers to get 1 grown man. "Good," Nathan said. "That's good." Ruiz studied him. "You're going to ask for leniency, aren't you, for Grant?" Nathan didn't answer right away. From the next room came the sound of Emma humming her mother's song under her breath as she worked the way she did now, absently, the way you hum a song that's become part of you. "I've been thinking about my wife," Nathan said finally. "Sarah. She had this thing she used to say. She said the world's already got enough people making other people smaller. She said the whole entire job of being alive is to be one of the ones who does the opposite." He looked at the detective. "That man took 2 weeks of my life and 1 terrible night from my daughter. If I stand up in that courtroom and pour everything I've got into burying him for 10 years, I get to feel powerful for about a minute. And then I've spent the last of what he took from me. I've let him make me smaller too. And I'll have taught my daughter that the answer to somebody hurting you is to hurt them back as hard as you can." He shook his head slowly. "I didn't spend 2 years keeping the worst part of myself in a box, just to let a guy like Tyler Grant coax it back out in a courtroom." Ruiz stared at him for a long moment. "You're a strange man, Nathan Brooks. I've been told. I mean it as a compliment." "I know," Nathan said. "That's how I took it." He did go to the sentencing. He went in his one good shirt, and he left Emma with Carol because a courtroom was no place for her. And he sat in the gallery and listened to the prosecutor lay out the case for the maximum. And it was a good case, a strong case, and every word of it was true. And then the judge asked if the victim wished to make a statement, and Nathan Brooks stood up. Tyler was at the defense table, and he'd changed in the weeks since the parking lot. The swagger was gone, completely gone, burned out of him. He'd lost weight. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a month, hollow-eyed, smaller somehow, as if the collapse of everything he'd built had let some of the air out of him. He couldn't look at Nathan. He stared at the table. "Your Honor," Nathan said, "I'm not a man who's comfortable talking in front of people. I'd rather be just about anywhere than up here right now, so I'll be quick." The courtroom was silent. "What this man did to my daughter is the worst thing anyone has ever done to me. I want to be clear about that. I've been shot. I've lost friends. I've buried people I loved. And the moment I came around that corner and saw a stranger's hand on my little girl's arm, that's the worst it's ever been. I'm never going to forget it. Part of me is never going to forgive it. I want to be honest with the court about that, because I'm about to ask for something, and I don't want anybody thinking I'm asking because I don't understand what he did." He paused. "But I've spent most of my life around violence, more than most people will ever know. And the one thing I learned, the only thing that was worth learning, is that you can't build anything good on top of it. You can stop a bad thing with force. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes there's no other way, and God knows I've had to. But you can't make a good thing with it. Force just makes more force. Hurt just makes more hurt. It goes around and around forever until somebody somewhere finally decides to eat the cost and let it stop with them." Nathan looked at the judge. "I'd like to be where it stops." A murmur ran through the gallery. Tyler Grant's head came up slowly, and for the first time, he looked at Nathan Brooks, and there was something in his ruined face that hadn't been there before, something that might given years become the beginning of a soul. "I'm not asking you to let him go," Nathan said. "He needs to face what he did. There have to be consequences, or it doesn't mean anything. But the prosecutor's asking for 8 to 10 years, and I'm asking the court to consider that this is a man who's already lost everything. His career, his reputation, every dime he had. Everything he built his whole life around is gone, and it's gone because of choices he made, and he's going to have to live inside that for the rest of his days, no matter what this court decides. 10 years in a cell won't teach him anything that losing everything hasn't already started to. I'd ask you to give him a sentence that punishes what he did, but that also leaves a door open. A short one. So that there's still a man left at the end of it who might do something better with the rest of his life than the beginning." He sat down. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the clock. The judge, a woman in her 60s who had sentenced a great many people over a great many years and thought she'd lost the capacity to be surprised. In a courtroom, took off her glasses and looked at Nathan Brooks for a long moment. "In 31 years on the bench," she said, "I have heard a great many victim statements. I have never once heard a victim ask for less than the law allows. Not once." She put her glasses back on. "Mr. Brooks, I don't know what they made you into in whatever it was you did before you came to this town. But they made you into something this courtroom doesn't see very often, and I'll take what you've said into account." She sentenced Tyler Grant to 3 years with the possibility of parole after 18 months contingent on completion of a violence intervention program. It was not nothing. It was real time, real consequences, real punishment for a real crime. But it was a fraction of what the man had been facing, and everyone in that courtroom knew exactly why, and everyone in that courtroom knew exactly whose words had made the difference. As they led Tyler out, he stopped. He turned. He looked at Nathan Brooks across the courtroom, and his mouth opened, and no sound came out because there were no words in Tyler Grant's whole vocabulary for the thing he was feeling. No video, no caption, no clip that could hold it. He'd spent 2 weeks trying to make this man fight him, trying to prove they were the same underneath trying to drag Nathan down to where he lived. And Nathan had just stood up in a court of law and lifted him instead. The bailiff moved him along and he went, and the last thing he saw before the door closed was Nathan Brooks watching him go, not with hatred, not with triumph, but with something that looked impossibly like hope. Nathan drove home. He picked Emma up from Carol's. She climbed into the truck and buckled her belt, and he checked it twice out of habit, older than she was, and she said, "How was the court thing?" "It was okay," Nathan said. "It's over now." "Did the man go to jail?" For a while, yeah. A long while. Nathan pulled out onto the road into the gold Colorado evening, the same light as always, the mountains close enough to touch. Long enough, he said, but not forever. I asked the judge not to make it forever. Emma frowned, working through it. Why, after what he did? Nathan was quiet a moment, choosing his words the way he always did, with her carefully, as if he were laying down stones she'd walk across for the rest of her life. Because a long time ago, he said, I did some things I'm not proud of, and every single time somebody chose to give me another chance instead of the worst thing I deserved. Your mom did. My commanders did. God did, probably more than once. He glanced at her. I got where I am on a whole lot of second chances, Emma. It'd be a pretty ungrateful thing after all that to be the guy who won't give one. Emma thought about this the whole way home, watching the mountains go by, and Nathan let her think, because some things a kid has to turn over in her own hands to understand. And just as they pulled into the driveway, she said in a small, certain voice, the thing that Nathan would carry with him for the rest of his life. The thing that told him she'd understood all of it every bit better than most grown men ever would. You didn't win because you're stronger. Nathan put the truck in park. He looked at his daughter. You won, Emma said, because you never wanted to fight. For a moment, Nathan Brooks couldn't speak. He looked at this small person, this 9-year-old girl with her mother's eyes and her mother's way of seeing straight through to the true center of things, and he understood that everything he'd done, every hard choice, every swallowed word, every night, he'd kept the lid on the box. All of it had been worth it because it had made this, her. A child who understood at 9, the thing it had taken him a whole life of war to learn. He reached over and pulled her into a hug across the seat, awkward over the gear shift, and held her, and didn't let her see his face. Yeah, sweetheart, he said when he could. That's exactly right. That's exactly it. And Nathan Brooks smiled and carried his daughter into their quiet house, in their quiet town, where the evening came down soft over the mountains, and no one who drove past the little place on Locust Street would ever have guessed at any of it. The war, the medals, the parking lot, the courtroom, the whole enormous weight one gentle man had carried so that one small girl would never have to feel it at all. The first year without Tyler Grant in it was the quietest year Nathan Brooks had known since he'd come home from the war. The news vans gave up after a week, the way news vans do when Denny turned every one of them away with the same 3 words, no comment ever, and the world which had briefly decided. Nathan Brooks was the most important man in America, got bored of him exactly as fast as he'd hoped it would, and went looking for its next hero somewhere else. The shirt stopped selling. The clips stopped trending. And the town of Fairview, Colorado, which had spent 2 weeks either mocking Nathan or worshiping him, slowly, mercifully went back to just knowing him. The maintenance guy at the high school, the one with the little girl, the quiet one, which was exactly what Nathan wanted and exactly what he got, and for a long while, that was the whole story. The absence of story. The gift of an ordinary life handed back to a man who had learned the hard way more than once that ordinary is the rarest and most precious thing there is. He woke at 4:47 every morning. He made the coffee. He packed the lunch. He drove Emma to school in the old blue truck with the heater that still took 10 minutes to remember its job, and she still talked the whole way. Though the topics changed less about birds and bounce houses, now more about a boy in her class she'd decided was annoying, but in a nice way, which made Nathan's stomach drop in a way he chose not to examine. You're too young to think anyone's nice annoying, he informed her. I'm 10. Exactly. Way too young. You were probably nice annoying to Mom when you were 10. I was extremely annoying to your mom at every age, Nathan admitted, and there was nothing nice about it. And Emma laughed, and the truck rolled on through the cold gold morning, and it was good. It was so good, it sometimes frightened him the way a man who has lost things is always a little frightened by good. Tyler Grant served 18 months. Nathan knew the date he came up for parole, because Detective Ruiz called to tell him a courtesy, because she'd stayed in touch over the year in the loose way people do when they've been through something together. She'd become improbably something close to a friend, dropping by every few weeks, sitting at the kitchen table, and Nathan had come to understand that she was one of the few people in Fairview who saw him clearly, and had decided to let him be exactly who he was pretending to be, which is the truest kind of friendship there is. "He's getting out Thursday," she told him. "Completed the violence intervention program. Actually, the counselor who ran it, I talked to her. She said in 15 years, she's never seen anybody take to it like he did. Said he came in a wreck and something in there just cracked him open." Ruiz paused. "I thought you'd want to know. In case." "In case what?" "In case he comes around." Nathan considered that. "You think he will?" "I don't know," Ruiz said. "A year ago, I'd have told you to change your locks and get a restraining order. Now—" She was quiet a moment. "I honestly don't know what that man is anymore. Neither does he probably. But I've been doing this a long time, Nathan, and I've learned there's two kinds of people who lose everything. The kind who spend the rest of their life trying to get it back and get meaner every year they can't. And the kind who lose it all and finally, for the first time, get to find out who they actually are underneath it." She let that sit. "I couldn't tell you which kind he is, but you're the reason he got the chance to find out." So, Nathan thanked her and hung up and didn't tell Emma and waited. Tyler Grant came on a Sunday afternoon in early spring, almost 2 years to the day since a man with a microphone had pointed at Nathan Brooks in a crowd and called him a coward. Nathan was in the front yard, changing the oil in the truck, Emma reading on the porch steps when a car he didn't recognize slowed and stopped at the curb. Every old instinct in Nathan came online at once, quiet and total, and he was on his feet and angling his body between the car and his daughter before the engine even cut off. Then the door opened, and Tyler Grant got out, and Nathan went very still. He almost didn't recognize him. The man who climbed out of that car was not the man from the stage, not the man from the parking lot, not the hollow wreck from the courtroom. He was thinner, older looking, his hair shorter, plainer. But it was more than that. Tyler moved differently. All the coiled, showy look-at-me energy that had radiated off him, like heat, was simply gone, and what stood in its place was a man who held himself carefully, tentatively, the way a person holds themselves when they've had to build a whole new self from scratch and aren't yet sure it'll hold their weight. He stopped at the edge of the yard. He didn't come closer. He seemed to understand without being told exactly how close he was allowed to be. "Mr. Brooks," he said. His voice was different too, quieter. "I'm sorry to just show up. I didn't have a way to call ahead that wouldn't have been worse." Nathan didn't move from where he stood still between Tyler and the porch. "Emma," he said, not turning around, keeping his eyes on the man. "Go inside for a few minutes, sweetheart." But Emma, 10 now sharper than ever, had already stood up on the porch and was looking at the stranger with a slow, dawning recognition. "That's him," she said. Not afraid, just certain. "That's the man from the store, from the fundraiser. Emma, inside, please." "It's okay, Dad." And she said it with such calm, such unshakable 10-year-old authority that both men turned to look at her. She came down one step. "He looks different now. He looks sad different, not bad different." She tilted her head at Tyler, studying him with those eyes that saw straight through to the center of things, her mother's eyes. "Are you here to say sorry?" Tyler Grant, who had faced down 100 opponents in a ring and never once flinched, looked at a 10-year-old girl and felt his throat close completely. "Yes," he managed. "Yeah, I am. If that's okay. If your dad says it's okay." Nathan looked at his daughter, looked at the man, and something in him, some final knot he hadn't even known was still tied, loosened. "Emma," he said, "go on inside and get us some waters. 3, we'll be right here." She went, and Nathan turned to face Tyler fully, and for a long moment the two men just looked at each other across the yard, the whole terrible history between them hanging in the spring air. "You've got 60 seconds, Nathan said. Not cruel, just true. Say what you came to say." Tyler nodded. He'd clearly rehearsed it, and just as clearly every rehearsed word had gone out of his head the second he saw Emma. So when he spoke, it came out raw and unplanned and real. "I can't give it back," he said. "That's the first thing I figured out in there. The thing I did to her, to you, I can't ever give it back. I kept wanting there to be some way to fix it, and there isn't. It's just done. It's just something I did, and it's part of me now, and I have to carry it every day forever." His voice shook. "I spent the first 6 months so angry I couldn't see straight. Angry at you. Isn't that insane? You saved the sentence, the everything I know. It was you. I know what you did in that courtroom, and I spent 6 months hating you for it, because as long as I was in a cell, I could tell myself it was somebody else's fault. Yours, the judge's, the internet's, anybody's but mine." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "And then one day in group, this counselor, she wouldn't let me get away with it anymore. She just kept asking me the same question over and over for weeks. She kept asking why I needed everyone to watch, why I couldn't do anything, win anything, be anything, unless there was a crowd there to see it." His voice dropped to almost nothing. "And I finally told her. About my dad. About how he never once came to a single fight. Not one. I won 111 times, and he never came. And I built this whole machine, this whole life, just to make enough noise that somewhere somehow he'd finally have to look." Tyler's face crumpled. "You said it. In the parking lot. You said I'd never been scared of the right thing. You were right. I was never scared of getting hit. I was scared of not mattering. And I did the worst thing a person can do to try and fix it." Nathan said nothing. He let the man empty himself out. "I'm not here to ask you to forgive me," Tyler said. "I don't think you should. I don't think I get that. I needed you to know that I understand now. What you did. Not the fighting. Anybody can learn to fight. What you did that I couldn't understand the whole time, the thing that made me crazy." He looked up and met Nathan's eyes finally, and held them. "You had all that power, and you spent it being gentle. For 2 years. For her. You had the strongest thing I ever saw in my life, and you used it to fix boilers and pack lunches and never let your little girl find out what you were. And I looked at that, and I thought you were weak. I looked at the strongest man I ever met, and I called him a coward on the internet." His voice broke completely. I'm so sorry, Mr. Brooks. That's all. That's the whole thing. I'm sorry." The screen door creaked, and Emma came back out with 3 waters clutched to her chest, and she came down the steps and walked right up to Tyler Grant, past her father, before Nathan could stop her, and she held out one of the waters to him. Tyler stared at it like he didn't understand. "You look thirsty," Emma said simply. "And Dad says you're a sad guy who did bad things, not a bad guy. There's a difference." She pushed the water an inch closer. "Take it." And Tyler Grant, 111 wins, undefeated, the toughest man he'd ever believed himself to be, took a bottle of water from the small hands of the child he'd once lured into a parking lot, and he broke. Right there in the front yard. He sat down hard on the curb and put his face in his hands and wept like something inside him had finally, after 35 years, been allowed to come out. And Emma stood over him with her serious 10-year-old face, and after a moment, patted him once gently on the shoulder. "It's okay," she said. "You can stop being sad now. You said sorry. That's the important part." Nathan watched his daughter comfort the man who had abducted her, and he understood in that moment more completely than he ever had, that he had raised something extraordinary, that whatever he'd done right in his whole complicated life, this was it, this was the thing, this child who could look at the worst that had ever happened to her, and see on the other side of it a hurting person who needed a glass of water. He crouched down next to Tyler on the curb. "Hey," he said quietly. "Hey, look at me." Tyler looked up, streaming. "I forgive you," Nathan said. Tyler's whole face collapsed. "You don't have to, you shouldn't. I know I don't have to. That's what makes it forgiveness instead of a transaction." Nathan put a hand on the man's shoulder, the same shoulder Emma had patted. "Listen to me. I'm not doing this for you. I want to be honest about that. I'm doing it for me, and I'm doing it for her. Because carrying around hate for you is a weight, and I've carried enough weight for one life, and I'm setting this one down. You don't get to decide whether I forgive you. That's mine, and I'm giving it to you." He squeezed the shoulder once hard. "Now what you do with the rest of your life, that part's yours. And you'd better not waste it. Because I spent something real to give it back to you. And if you waste it, that's on you now, not me." Tyler nodded, unable to speak, and Nathan stood and pulled the man up after him, and the three of them stood in the front yard in the spring afternoon, and something that had been broken for 2 years, and maybe for a lot longer than that, quietly began to heal. Tyler stayed for an hour. He drank his water. He and Nathan talked carefully like two men learning the edges of something new. And before he left, he told Nathan what he was going to do, and Nathan listened and thought his wife would have liked it, would have seen it coming. Maybe the way she always saw the good in people before they saw it in themselves. He was going to open a gym, not like the old one, not a temple to himself, not a machine for making noise and getting sponsors and calling out regular guys for clicks. A youth center. A place for kids who had nowhere to go after school, the kind of kids he'd been angry and hungry and desperate to matter. I was going to teach them to fight. Really fight the real thing. Discipline and control and respect. And more than that, he was going to teach them the thing. It had taken him a prison sentence and a stranger's mercy to learn. Which was that the whole point of learning to hurt people is so that you never ever have to. "I don't have any money," Tyler said, almost laughing. "I lost all of it. I'm starting from nothing. I've got a landlord willing to give me a broken-down space for cheap and about $400 to my name." Nathan looked at him a long moment. Then he said, "What nights?" "What?" "The center. What nights will you have kids there?" "I weeknights, I guess, after school." "Why?" "Because I fix things," Nathan said. "Boilers mostly, but also floors and walls and heating and just about anything else in a broken-down building that a landlord's willing to rent cheap. And I've got some weeknights free." He put out his hand. "You're going to need help getting the place up to code. I'll come by after work." Tyler stared at the offered hand like it was the most incomprehensible object in the world. "Why?" he whispered. "After everything, why would you?" "Because a long time ago," Nathan said, "a sergeant grabbed me by the collar and told me I was going to get somebody killed, and I hated him for it, and he was the best thing that ever happened to me. Somebody believed I could be more than I was right when I deserved it least." He kept his hand out. "Somebody did that for me, so I do it for other people. That's the whole deal, Tyler. That's the only thing any of it was ever for. You pass it on." Tyler Grant took Nathan Brooks's hand and shook it, and neither man said anything because there wasn't anything left that needed saying. The youth center opened 4 months later. Nathan did come on weeknights after work, and he fixed the heating and patched the floors and rewired the lights, and he never once told a single one of the kids who he was or what he'd done, and Tyler never told them either because Tyler understood now, finally, the thing that had made Nathan strong. Some things you do quietly, or they're not worth doing. The kids just knew him as Mr. Brooks, the quiet guy who fixed stuff, and sometimes, if you asked him nice, would show you how to fall down without getting hurt. He never taught them to fight. That was Tyler's job. Nathan only ever taught them the one thing he was truly a master of: the hardest thing, the thing it had taken him a whole life of war to learn: how to be still. How to be calm when everything in you wants to swing. How to hold a great deal of power and choose and keep choosing not to use it. And the center grew. And the kids came, the angry ones, the hungry ones, the ones who reminded Tyler of himself, and some of them straightened out and some of them didn't. The way it always goes, but more of them did than would have otherwise, and every single one of them had a place to go on a weeknight where a reformed man and a secret warrior were quietly, patiently teaching them that strength and gentleness were not opposites, but the same thing seen from two sides. Tyler Grant never fought competitively again. His shoulder, injured in a training accident that first year, would never have allowed it anyway. But he told Nathan once, late after the kids had gone home, and the two of them were locking up, that it was the best thing that ever happened to him. "If I hadn't gotten hurt," Tyler said, "I'd have found a way to make it about me again. I know I would have. Some part of me would have started wanting the crowd back. But I can't fight anymore, so I can't be the star, so I just get to—" He gestured around the empty gym. "Do this. Help. Quiet. It's the first thing in my whole life I ever did that wasn't for anybody to watch." He looked at Nathan. "I get it now. I finally get what you had that I wanted so bad I tried to destroy it. You were free. You didn't need anybody to see you. That's what freedom is, isn't it? Not needing the crowd." "That's most of it," Nathan agreed. What's the rest of it? Nathan thought about it, turned off the last of the lights. Having somebody worth being quiet for, he said. That's the rest of it. That's the part that makes all the rest possible. The years went on, the way years do, quiet and fast. Emma grew up. She grew up knowing her father had been a soldier because he'd told her the truth that night in the truck and never took it back. But she grew up knowing it, the way you know a fact about someone you love, as one part of a whole person, not the most important part, not the part that defined him. To the town. Nathan Brooks stayed the maintenance guy, the quiet one. And one by one, the people who'd seen the video and known the truth moved away, or forgot, or simply let it fade. The way even the biggest things fade, and within a few years, hardly anyone in Fairview remembered that the man who fixed the high school's boilers had once commanded elite soldiers into the worst places on earth. The legend, such as it was, dissolved back into ordinary life, which was exactly what Nathan had always wanted, and exactly what he finally got. The town forgot. But Emma never did. She never forgot the man on the stage, or the video, or the parking lot, or the courtroom, where her father stood up and asked a judge for mercy for the man who'd taken her. She never forgot the front yard, and the water, and Tyler Grant, weeping on the curb. And most of all, she never forgot the thing she'd understood in the truck at 10 years old. The thing that became as she grew the compass she steered her whole life by. She was 17 when she said it to him again. They were in the kitchen, and she'd come home upset about something. A boy who'd been cruel to a friend. A fight she'd wanted to have and hadn't. And she was angry at herself for not fighting it. And Nathan listened the way he always did. And when she was done, he asked her one question. Did walking away make you weak? Or did it make you strong enough not to need to win? And Emma looked at her father. 49 now. Gray coming in at his temples. Still calm. Still quiet. Still the strongest and gentlest man she had ever known or ever would. And she remembered all at once, everything. You didn't win because you're stronger, she said softly, the old words their words. You won because you never wanted to fight. Nathan smiled. You remembered. I never forgot, not one day. She crossed the kitchen and hugged him. This girl who was nearly a woman, now taller than her mother had been, with her mother's way of seeing straight through to the center of things. You taught me the most important thing anybody ever taught me, Dad. And you didn't even do it with words. You did it by being it, every day, for my whole life. Nathan held his daughter in the quiet kitchen of the quiet house in the quiet town, and he thought about all of it. The war and the medals in a locked case on a closet shelf. And Sarah and the 2 years he'd spent keeping the lid on the box, and a man with a microphone who'd called him a coward, and everything that came after. He thought about how close he'd come more than once to becoming the thing Tyler Grant had tried to make him become. And he thought about how the whole entire meaning of his life had turned out to be not a single one of the 41 missions, not one of the medals, not one of the moments of courage under fire that had made a colonel weep in a parking lot, but this kitchen. This girl. This ordinary, unremarkable, hard-won, gentle life. Real strength, he had spent his whole life learning, is not measured by the battles you win. Anyone can win a battle who's willing to become something terrible to do it. Real strength is measured by the battles you're strong enough to choose not to fight the swings. You don't take the wars. You walk away from the terrible power you carry your whole life and never ever set loose because you love something more than you love being seen as strong. Nathan Brooks had been the most dangerous man in every room he'd ever walked into, and almost no one had ever known it. And that was the whole point. He had spent the second half of his life proving to an audience of one small girl that the strongest thing a man can ever do is stay gentle. And she had learned it. Completely. Forever. That was the victory. That was the only one that ever mattered. And it was won from first to last, without a single thrown punch by a quiet man in an old blue truck who woke every morning at 4:47 and made the coffee and packed the lunch and chose every single day for love to be the calm